Hi there. Well, we're at the far right of our political spectrum, hence the black shirt to represent the Italian fascists of the 1920s and 30s. But what is it that fascism stands for? Well, I think above all else, fascism is extremely nationalist. The nation will always come first for fascists. But we often describe fascism by what it stands opposed to rather than what it stands for. Fascism has a contempt for liberalism and for democracy. It has a hatred for socialism and communism. Fascism, in its place, almost worships power and the authoritarian state. The Nazis talked about Führerprinzip, the leadership principle, and they talked of ein Reich, ein Volk, ein Führer, one state, one people, one leader. Very, very strong in fascism. Fascism also believes in a hierarchy of races, and the Aryan race is seen as the master race. It has a contempt for Slavs and for Jews, particularly Nazism, the German form of fascism. Nazism believed in racial purity, that the race can be weakened by its bloodstream. Hence it was against intermarriage between races, and it was against anything that might weaken the blood. Hence it was in favour of sterilisation programs, even euthanasia programs, in order to make sure its bloodstock was virile and strong. Economically, fascism favours the corporatist state, particularly now I think Italian fascism. This is a state or an economy in which worker, capitalist and state will come together and work together, but it will be under the control of the state. And the poor old worker will not come out as well as the capitalist. Germans talked of Volksgemeinschaft, the national community. This is an exclusive community, first of all, and if you didn't belong, you were well and truly excluded from it, like the Jews. But it was to be a tightly bound community. Again, everyone working together for the good of the state. But it was also at one and the same time, it was a community and developing an economy that was going to make Germany and Italy the strongest, most powerful states in the world. And yet at the same time, it held to very traditional values. The values of rural society, the values of the peasant, the values of a virtuous life, careful with your money, the values of the family. And so there's a contradiction often in fascism. I used to say to my students, look, your job is not to resolve those contradictions, your job is to explain them. So don't worry that they're there, they are. Just explain them. Don't try and resolve them, you can't. So We see it as well in this traditional view of society. We see it in the roles of men and women. Hitler talked about separate spheres for men and women. For men, it's a public life, a life in the economy, a life in politics, a life in the army. Whereas for women, it was a life behind closed doors, a very private life, raising the family, looking after the man, very traditional values. And so I hope that little tour of fascism is of use to you. I hope it helps put Mussolini and Hitler into a better perspective for you. And I hope this whole series looking at the political spectrum has helped. Don't forget, I will have written versions of these on my website, History Made Easier. So do go to that as well. But for now, as always, thank you for listening. Cheers.